Hey, what's going on, Headliner Nation? Welcome back to the Fantasy Headliners. Kyle coming to you from the Draft.com studios. And this past weekend, we had a ton of fantasy value move up, move down, stay the same. Big names were cut, big trades were made, but we have a lot of information that we need to throw out to you in a short amount of time. We've seen all of the questions on the channel, in the comments, and I was going to put a video up for you sooner, but it's been a busy weekend, a holiday weekend, and that first week leading up to the season, we have a lot of things that we're trying to get in place. So apologize this didn't come quicker, but I wanted to get some of this information out to you as soon as I possibly could, which was today. Now, a couple of these things may have come up in the waiver wire episode that posted earlier this morning. If you haven't checked it out yet, make sure you do so. The first waiver wire show of the year already posted this morning, but we'll talk about a couple of those things again and go in depth on a couple of more things. So without further ado, let's jump into it. All right, the first thing that we need to talk about, the Buffalo Bills. And with the Buffalo Bills, LeSean McCoy being cut, maybe not a surprise to very many people. Some people thought it was surprising. However, it's something that has been a possibility for a while now because they're able to save a little bit of money. They have more than enough running backs there to carry the workload, though. So the question is, for the Buffalo Bills, what running back do you buy? Again, touched on this in the waiver wire episode already, but Devin Singletary is going to be the guy that I'm buying as of right now. The only problem with that is with Devin Singletary, you're likely going to have to wait. This is going to be split among three running backs to start the year. So we've got Devin Singletary, we've got TJ Yeldon, and we've got Frank Gore. More than likely, you're going to see a lot of roles change depending on the pace of the play, depending on the score, game script, what's going on. I mean, there's anybody could be on any certain time, changing hot hands, whatever it may be. So if you take Singletary now, you're probably still going to have to wait a while, but that's okay because he is the guy with the highest ceiling. He's the guy with the brightest future with the Bills. He's going to be the guy that is going to probably continue to build up his workload over the course of the season. So even though you won't get that value right now, you're going to get that maybe halfway through the season, 3 quarters, but by the end of the year, Devin Singletary is going to take over as the main guy. But what else right now are we doing? Well, if Devin Singletary is already owned, which it's quite possible, you might want to take a shot on TJ Yeldon or Frank Gore. Now, TJ Yeldon is a PPR guy for me. So if you're in a PPR league, then I would recommend stashing TJ Yeldon. To begin the year, he's going to be the third down back. He's going to be the pass catching back. And in, again, different types of game scripts, he can end up being the guy that puts up the most fantasy points if he's getting enough catches out of the backfield. I think he's worth a stash right now in PPR leagues. But again, at some point, Devin Singletary is going to take more and more volume. So while he might be all right for the first few weeks of the season, as the season goes on, he's probably going to lose that value. Basically the same thing for Frank Gore in standard leagues. So if you're in a standard league, I'm going to stay away from TJ Yeldon. I'm going to invest in Frank Gore. Same though. He's going to probably lose some touches as the season goes on. Now, he won't lose as many as TJ Yeldon. TJ Yeldon is the one that has the most value to lose. Devin Singletary has the most value to gain. And Frank Gore is going to be a guy that's probably going to remain stagnant throughout the year. He's going to get a majority of the workload on the ground, or at least at some point, you're going to see an even 50-50 split in carries between him and Devin Singletary. So, as of right now, again, Devin Singletary is the first guy that we're going to buy, even though it might take a little bit. Standard leagues, take a look at Gore. PPR leagues, take a look at Yeldon. Hopefully, though, you have a strong enough running back core on your team that you don't have to worry about any of it because it could end up being really messy like the next team we're going to talk about. Shortly after the Kansas City Chiefs decided to part ways with Carlos Hyde and send him to the Houston Texans via trade, we thought Darwin Thompson was going to be locked in as the running back 2 in an offense that always puts their running backs in a position to succeed. He was going to see a decent amount of workload as the running back 2 to start the season, and he was a threat to Damian Williams to take his job, especially if Damian Williams was unable to remain healthy. We've had concerns about Damian Williams all offseason. His value from last year is propped up by an unsustainable amount of touchdowns that he was not going to be able to keep up with in 2019. However, a gentleman we just talked about a second ago in LeSean McCoy, he decided very early Sunday morning to go ahead and sign with the Chiefs and reunite himself with former head coach Andy Reid. So what does that do for all of these people moving forward? Well, it makes the situation extremely difficult. With Darwin Thompson, to start with him, he's a guy that we have been telling you to pick up for quite some time. If you've already drafted him, I recommend just holding him for right now. Unless you really need to pick up somebody that's going to offer you legit fantasy upside to begin with, keep Thompson on your bench because he has the highest ceiling. He is probably the most dynamic running back at this stage in their careers on that offense. If anything were to happen injury-wise, Darwin Thompson is still a threat to take a large amount of that workload by the end of the season. But he has a large hill in front of him. LeSean McCoy did not sign for $3 million guaranteed dollars to stand around and watch this offense play. And it's not like he's a running back coming into a system that he's going to have to learn. He's been in Andy Reid's system before. They worked together in Philadelphia. He is going to have no problems coming in and picking up the offense right away and performing. Moving forward, Damian Williams and LeSean McCoy are basically going to be a 50-50 split. Damian Williams will likely see a lot of work in the passing game. LeSean McCoy will likely see a lot of work on the ground. You might see one guy have a big week one week. You might see one guy have a big week the next week. They could change a lot. If you already own Damian Williams, I highly encourage you to try and get LeSean McCoy just in case. If you own LeSean McCoy, you could try and get Damian Williams because more than likely the current owner might be in a little bit of a panic. You could get him at a pretty decent price. Both of these guys for us right now have solidified themselves as a low-end running back 2 or high-end running back 3, depending on the amount of workload they get. But just keep in mind, these guys are one injury away from having a substantial workload, and Darwin Thompson is waiting there in the shadows to jump out and take a job. It's going to be difficult to navigate the season with either of them, but we're going to do our best. More than likely, a lot of you have already rostered one of the three. Hold tight for right now. See what happens. If LeSean McCoy was dropped by an impatient owner, put in a waiver claim for him. Let's see what happens. But one of these guys by the end of the season is going to be the guy that we want in our lineups every week. So with all the running backs that have been changing places, they've been really affecting each other in different areas. Carlos Hyde moving from Kansas City to Houston now. What is Carlos Hyde going to do to Duke Johnson and his value? Well, that's an easy answer for you, Headliner Nation. It's not affected at all. Duke Johnson is still a high-end running back 2 with running back 1 upside for me on a weekly basis. Carlos Hyde, to me, is absolutely no threat. In fact, when I saw they got Carlos Hyde, I was thrilled because LeSean McCoy would have been more of a worry for me than Carlos Hyde. Trying to get Melvin Gordon absolutely would have been a worry for me. Carlos Hyde is not a worry for me. Last season in Cleveland, in the short amount of time he spent there, he barely averaged 3.4 yards per carry. In fact, at one point, they just tossed him out of town in a trade to Jacksonville so they could get Nick Chubb in the lineup more often. When he got to Jacksonville, he didn't do anything, especially when Leonard Fournette was there and he was healthy and on the field and not suspended. So Carlos Hyde has had 3 teams now in the last year that he's had a shot with, and he's missed out on that shot all 3 times, Kansas City being the last one. So now that he's in Houston, I just don't see things changing. He's a complimentary back. He's going to be a guy that's going to help Duke Johnson out. Is he going to see a 70-30 split? Yeah, quite possibly. But 70% of the touches for Duke Johnson is going to be more than enough to return the high running back 2 value that we see with him in PPR leagues. So if you hold Duke Johnson, do not worry about Carlos Hyde whatsoever. He's going to win out. Talent is going to win out. Duke Johnson is finally going to get his shot, and he is not going to look back. Don't worry about running to the waiver wire for Carlos Hyde. And if you own Carlos Hyde, honestly, just drop him. I'm not worried about it. Duke Johnson is the guy to own. Duke Johnson is going to have a big season for the Houston Texans. And now that they have themselves a left tackle as well, things are only looking brighter for Duke Johnson now that he's solidified as the running back 1 for the Houston Texans. One of my main waiver wire pickups this week is Justice Hill, and he saw a nice bump in value because of Kenneth Dixon heading to the IR. There had been rumblings all preseason long that Kenneth Dixon may end up being cut, but honestly, I was being cautious with it. The Baltimore Ravens have been trying to give Kenneth Dixon as much opportunities as possible. He just can't stay healthy and he can't stay on the field and keep himself out of trouble. Once again, he's going to be headed to the IR though, and now officially it looks like his time with the Ravens will be done as he might be released, he might be traded, he might be cut. We'll see what happens. But that firmly cements Justice Hill as the running back 2 in an offense that's probably going to be pretty dynamic this season, and you're going to see a lot of different looks. Justice Hill is a guy, 100% in a PPR league, I want on my roster. Make sure that you grab him if he is still on your waiver wire. The one thing I like about Justice Hill is he's going to be an excellent change of pace back for Mark Ingram. I like Lamar Jackson. I think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback, but there is still a possibility in 2019 that he's a little inconsistent. And that's okay. That happens from time to time. But if Lamar Jackson finds himself in a situation where he's inconsistent and he's needing that nice safety valve, that could end up being Justice Hill to go along with Mark Andrews. If Lamar Jackson has to check down to Justice Hill is a very good athlete. He's a dynamic athlete. His scores at the combine were very good until he ended up hurting himself and didn't get to partake in everything there. There is a reason that this guy is in Baltimore now and that they did not let him get out of the third round. 100%, you need to own Justice Hill in 2019. He's an excellent PPR back. And if the Baltimore Ravens can implement a plan similar to what the New Orleans Saints did with Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, just with Justice Hill having a little bit lower of a workload than Alvin Kamara, Justice Hill could end up being a running back 3 by the end of this season in PPR formats. He's not going to get nearly the amount of red zone work that Alvin Kamara got, but he could make a similar type of impact in the passing game, again, with a lower level of actual volume. So keep an eye on him. The guy is very, very good. Don't let him sit on the waiver wire too long. He's going to have a lot of value for you this year. All right, one of the final questions that has come out of this weekend is Kenny Stills and what happens with him. Now, I'm a big believer in Kenny Stills. I've brought him up a couple of times as a boomer bust player on the channel, and I know when people think of Kenny Stills, they tend to write him off and push him to the side. He's in a very good offense now, though. But what's going to happen with his value, because him and Will Fuller could end up being kind of the same player. Now, the one thing that I do like about Kenny Stills is he can move inside or outside. He can be in the slot or he can be on the outside as well. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for there. But for him to find true value, you're going to have an injury occur to Will Fuller again. And I don't want to wish an injury on anyone, but he has had a lot of trouble staying healthy. If that happens, then you can put Kenny Stills on the outside. You can move him to the inside. If Kiki QT ends up being injured for an extended amount of time, Stills can go to the slot. There's a lot of different things that they can do with him. So would I go get him right now? Kenny Stills is a guy that if you have enough room, yes, go ahead and add him. If you have Will Fuller, though, don't discount Will Fuller. Don't discount Kiki QT. If you own QT, continue to hold for the time being. This is a team that could run a lot of 4 wide. Stills, QT, Hopkins, Fuller, they could all be on the field at the same time with Duke Johnson in the backfield. That's a lot of mismatches that are going to be available for this team and for Deshaun Watson to exploit. So again, if Kenny Stills is on your waiver wire, take a shot if you have the opening to do that. If you own him, don't drop him. Hold him for right now. If you own Fuller or Kiki QT, continue to hold as well. However, with QT, I wouldn't put any type of waiver wire claim in at this point, especially a high claim. Maybe if you have a 10th claim and you want to add him in a PPR league, then take a shot. But for the time being, it's going to take Kenny Stills a little bit of time to get himself in, get himself acclimated. It could take a few weeks for him to really get integrated into the offense. But when it happens, he could be an extreme mismatch weapon for Deshaun Watson in the Houston Texans. There you have it, Headliner Nation, covering some of the questions that you've had in the comments for us since all of the cutdowns took place on Saturday. Hopefully I was able to answer some of those questions for you, and you now know what to do with your rosters here in the first week of the season. The waiver wire episode is already dropped this morning, so if you haven't checked that out, make sure you do it now. Then you know what to do for claims, and then we've got a lot of start-sit videos coming out over the next couple of days. Headliner Nation, hit that like button if you enjoyed the content, but more importantly, if you are not a member of Headliner Nation right now, join this fantastic community by hitting subscribe. Let me know in the comments below if you subscribe today so I can personally welcome you to the channel. Headliner Nation, thanks for everything. We'll see you on the next episode. Have a good one.